Hello viewers, welcome to Newsweek South Asia, a show where we will provide you fresh insights into South Asia's geopolitical, strategic and security situation. Let's take a look at the headlines first. US marks 23rd anniversary of 9/11 with nationwide tributes and ceremonies. Kashmir diaspora condemns Pakistan state-sponsored terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir. And 2 Pakistani terrorists killed in anti-infiltration operation in Jammu and Kashmir. The United States of America commemorated the 23rd anniversary of the 9/11 terror attacks, a day when nearly 3,000 lives were tragically lost. Across the nation, ceremonies and gatherings were held as people came together at memorials to honor the victims and support their families. The coordinated attacks by al-Qaeda became a turning point in American history, leading to military engagements in Afghanistan and Iraq, while leaving an indelible mark on American society. A US flag was unfurled on the site of the Pentagon on September 11th to mark the 23rd anniversary of the 2001 September 11 attack. On the anniversary of the deadliest terror attacks on US soil, Americans came together in a show of unity and remembrance. Nationwide ceremonies saw survivors and relatives paying tribute to those who perished in the attacks. The main commemorative events were held at the sites of the attacks: New York's World Trade Center, the Pentagon in Virginia, and a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. US President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris attended a wreath-laying ceremony in Arlington. US Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin joined the families of the 9/11 victims to mark the moment.
We have repaired the damage to this building, but we cannot repair the damage to your hearts. No words can take away your grief. No amount of time can make sense of the worst terrorist attack in American history. And I know that for those whose lives were changed forever on 9/11, it can feel as if more and more Americans are returning to normal life on each new September 11th. But not here, not at the Pentagon, because we remember. The men and women of the Department of Defense remember, and we always will.
September 11, 2001 morning began as a bright and clear day before 19 al-Qaeda terrorists hijacked 4 commercial airplanes. American Airlines flight crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. The second plane, United Airlines Flight 175, struck the South Tower. Less than an hour later, American Airlines Flight 77 hit the Pentagon, the heart of US military operations. Passengers aboard United Airlines Flight 93, aware of the ongoing attacks, fought back against their hijackers, forcing the plane to crash in a field in Pennsylvania, likely preventing further devastation in Washington, D.C. Back in New York, the South Tower collapsed, followed by the North Tower, marking the complete devastation of the World Trade Center. The horror unfolded in real time across the world, and the death toll reached nearly 3,000 lives. The emotional and societal impact of the attack was profound.
I was in Richmond, Virginia, about 6 hours away, and everything was shut down, so I couldn't get home for a couple of days. And then we got home, we walked the streets of New York City, and we're looking for my dad, and didn't find him, and found a tremendous story that we're proud of.
The mastermind behind the 9/11 attacks was Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda. Followed the attacks, the United States launched a relentless manhunt for bin Laden, culminating in his death in a Navy SEAL raid on his compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan in 2011, ending a decade-long search for justice.
Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda.
The 9/11 attacks fundamentally altered US domestic and foreign policies, leading to the launch of the War on Terror. The US military interventions in Afghanistan and Iraq were direct responses to the attacks, while the rise of counter-terrorism measures became central to American and global security strategies. The legacy of September 11th serves as a reminder that the pursuit of justice and unity must continue in the face of extremism. In London, members of the Jammu and Kashmir diaspora, along with Indian and Hindu communities, gathered outside the UK Parliament to protest against Pakistan's alleged role in fueling terrorism in the region. The demonstrators urged global leaders to take action, accusing Pakistan of using terrorism as a tool to destabilize Jammu and Kashmir. Members of the Jammu and Kashmir diaspora in the United Kingdom staged a protest outside the UK Parliament condemning Pakistan's state-sponsored terrorism in the region. Holding placards with messages like "Pakistan stop terrorizing" and "the world must act on Pakistan's terrorism," the protesters urged British parliamentarians and global institutions to take a firm stance against Pakistan's use of terrorism as a state policy in Jammu and Kashmir. Joined by members of the Hindu community, they shared harrowing experiences of Pakistan's terrorism infrastructure that has targeted both civilians and Indian Army personnel, including during Hindu pilgrimages. The protest was held in response to Pakistan's propaganda event on Kashmir, which protesters claimed ignored the ground realities of Pakistan's illegal occupation and its role in perpetuating terrorism. To gain further insights into the protest and the concerns of the diaspora, we spoke with Manu Khajuria, a community activist based in London and the founder of the advocacy group Voice of Dogras. What prompted you to organize anti-Pakistan protest in the UK, and what message are you hoping to give to the international community?
Well, this was another one of the sham propaganda events organized by the Pakistani state and some members of the Pakistani diaspora in the United Kingdom on Jammu and Kashmir, which is their obsession, of course. And especially as somebody from Jammu and Kashmir, it was very important for us and the larger Indian diaspora to highlight the fact that Pakistan's role in Jammu and Kashmir has been anything other than peaceful or friendly. It has been violence-ridden. So since 1947, Pakistan's role in Jammu and Kashmir has been, multiple invasions, proxy war, cross-border terrorism, infiltration, use of non-state and state actors, trying to disrupt democratic political processes in Jammu and Kashmir, to disrupt peace, to destabilize, everything in Jammu and Kashmir. So this was very important for the diaspora, and especially the Jammu and Kashmir diaspora, as well as the larger Indian diaspora, to highlight to the international community, the British parliamentarians, the British community, the public, that Pakistan has a very negative role in Jammu and Kashmir, and it's a sponsor of terrorism, and this needs to be stopped, and action needs to be taken against Pakistan for sponsoring terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir. So this was the reason why a protest was held in front of the British Parliament on 10th September.
So, since you belong to Jammu and Kashmir, do you believe Pakistan's sponsorship of terrorism has undermined peace and progress in the region?
Absolutely, Shivangi. As I said, that since 1947, if we examine the role of Pakistan in Jammu and Kashmir, starting from the first invasion which an independent India saw, it happened in Jammu and Kashmir. There has been terrorism both in the Kashmir Valley and now after 2021, even more so in Jammu region where I come from. So I am a Dogra from the Jammu region. And we've seen, and beside the terrorism, the very fact that a large portion of mainland Jammu and some bit of Kashmir Valley, what we call the Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir, is an illegally occupied territory by Pakistan, which is used as a terror launchpad. We have terrorists coming in from this occupied territory. In fact, I'd like to highlight that in this protest, we also had members of the POJK diaspora who stood there because not only does Pakistan illegally occupy our territory, it also persecutes and oppresses the people who live there, people from Mirpur and Bhimbar and Kotli, the POJKians.
Do you believe that Pakistan is providing safe haven to terrorists in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir?
Absolutely, Shivangi. We are aware of the fact, and as I said, in the protest, we had members of the POJK diaspora who have come out again and again, and they've done their independent protests as well, where they've stated that their region, their hometowns, their homeland, and of course India's territory is being used as terror launchpads. We've had Pakistani terrorists come into our state. They've crossed these porous borders, especially in the Jammu region. We in fact now since 2021, the spike in terror activities in Jammu region, it's been said by the Jammu and Kashmir police chief that almost 50 foreign terrorists are operating, in the Jammu region, and we know the new terror group which has come up, which is the Resistance Front. It's a affiliate of the Lashkar-e-Toiba, and it's backed by Pakistan. So Pakistan is using not just Pakistani occupied Jammu and Kashmir to launch terror activities in Jammu and Kashmir. But the recent reports suggest that even retired Pakistani army personnel are coming into our state and carrying out these incidents.
What action do you want India and other international community to take against Pakistan or for sponsoring terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir?
I think I don't need to suggest to the government of India, they would already be doing this. But of course, the troop deployment has to be directed towards Jammu region because, as I said, in the last 1.5 years or more, we have had around 70 people who have been killed, including a large number of security personnel. And these security personnel, I don't need to say this, come from across the country. And hence the large Indian diaspora presence in this protest on September 10th in London, because it doesn't affect just a Dogra or a Kashmiri, it affects all Indians because we have these security personnel from all across the country. So, of course, troop deployment towards Jammu region. And internationally, of course, this is a well-known fact that Pakistan is a terror sponsor. We have enough evidence to prove it. So I think democratic governments across the world need to get up because this is not just a border dispute. Of course, they occupy our territory, but it is majorly a terrorism issue, a terrorism which affects all of us across the globe. So these democratic governments and international humanitarian organizations need to get up and see what's happening in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, the persecution and oppression of the people there, as well as the terrorism which is playing out, across our borders. They need to take a stand and call out Pakistan for sponsoring terrorism.
Thank you so much for joining in. It was really nice talking to you.
Thank you.
Increasing infiltration attempts by Pakistan-backed terrorists have once again raised alarm in Jammu and Kashmir. Recently, Indian security forces foiled a major infiltration bid in the Nowshera sector, killing 2 heavily armed terrorists. This incident is part of a broader pattern as terrorists continue to exploit border vulnerabilities to enter Indian territory. As the region braces for the winter months, security forces are on high alert, stepping up operations to prevent further threats to peace and stability.
On September 8, Indian security forces launched a coordinated anti-infiltration operation in the Nowshera sector of Jammu and Kashmir's Rajouri district. Acting on credible intelligence inputs, troops intercepted a group of heavily armed terrorists attempting to infiltrate into Indian territory from Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. a fierce gun battle ensued, resulting in the killing of 2 Pakistani terrorists. Warlike stores, including assault rifles, grenades, and explosives, were recovered from the slain terrorists. The recovery of these arms points to the well-organized nature of Pakistan-sponsored infiltration attempts aimed at fueling violence and destabilizing the region. Infiltration by Pakistani terrorists into Jammu and Kashmir remains a grave challenge for Indian security forces. Backed by Pakistan's military establishment, these terrorists seek to destabilize the region by carrying out attacks on civilians and security forces. Despite India's ongoing diplomatic efforts to address the issue of cross-border terrorism, Pakistan continues to use its territory as a launch pad for militants, with several terror outfits including Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed actively engaging in these activities.
Pakistani army is providing support, Pakistani intelligence agency is providing support, Pakistan as a nation is providing support as far as cross-border terrorism is concerned. The support is of various types. Number one is helping to recruit proper people who can become terrorists and go across. Second is giving them training, especially of weapons and minor tactics like how to infiltrate, how to hide, how to carry out camouflage concealment, how to fire, etc. Third is providing them with financial support. Fourth is giving them arms and ammunition which they will take when they try and infiltrate.
Earlier on August 29, the Indian Army successfully eliminated 3 terrorists attempting to infiltrate across the line of control in the Machal and Tangdhar sectors of Jammu and Kashmir. The LOC remains the primary infiltration route, with terrorists exploiting difficult terrain and adverse weather conditions to cross into Indian territory. Indian security agencies estimate that hundreds of terrorists are stationed at launch pads along the LOC, waiting for opportunities to infiltrate. Advanced surveillance systems, frequent patrolling, and counter-infiltration operations have helped to reduce the success rate of these attempts, but the threat persists, especially during periods of geopolitical tensions. With the winter season approaching, the security apparatus in Jammu and Kashmir is on the high alert, as the infiltration season often peaks during this time. The Indian Army and paramilitary forces continue to deploy resources and personnel to thwart these infiltration bids and neutralize terrorists attempting to disturb the peace in the region.
This area is all mountainous, heights varying from 4,000 feet to almost 12,000 feet. So keeping surveillance in such an area is difficult. Also, most of the area is completely forested. The moment forests are there, it is not easy to carry out surveillance. Also, what we have to understand is the second factor is the weather. At least 4 to 5 months in a year, it snows in this area, especially in the higher regions where the heights are more than 9,000 feet. When the snowfall takes place, the fence gets covered and infiltration becomes a bit easier. Also during snowfall, the visibility goes down. At times there are rains. Because of rains, the clouds come below, and therefore the visibility goes down. So that's another challenge.
Pakistan's strategy of using infiltration as a means to achieve its objectives against India has proven futile and counterproductive, leading to significant repercussions both internally and internationally due to terrorism. Despite decades of supporting and facilitating infiltration into Kashmir, Pakistan has not succeeded in altering the status quo or achieving its political goals. Instead, Pakistan finds itself grappling with the adverse consequences of terrorism within its own borders. Pakistan's involvement in supporting terrorism has led to international condemnation and isolation.
After more than a decade of relative calm, the hilly districts of the Jammu region are now witnessing a troubling surge in terror attacks. Security experts are sounding the alarm, warning that the situation could spiral out of control if immediate measures are not implemented. With Pakistan and terrorist groups shifting their focus from Kashmir to Jammu, the region faces a growing security threat. To discuss these critical developments, we are joined by Dipankar Sen Gupta, a geopolitical expert and professor of economics at the University of Jammu. Professor Sen Gupta will shed lights on the factors contributing to the recent spike in attacks, Pakistan's support for groups like Jaish-e-Mohammed and Lashkar-e-Taiba. We'll also explore Pakistan's failure to curb Islamist extremism, its ties with the Taliban, and whether there's any potential for meaningful dialogue between India and Pakistan on the Kashmir issue amid these rising tensions. Hello, sir. Welcome to the show. There has been a surge in terror attacks in Jammu and Kashmir, which highlight a persistent security challenge. In your view, what are the main factors contributing to this recent surge in the past few months, particularly in the border areas Jammu region?
Operations in Kashmir Valley, attacks in Kashmir Valley for the terrorists have become next to impossible. So one of the reasons as to why they are now staging these attacks in their routes is to divert some pressure. They basically want the army or the security forces to take off some pressure from their main staging grounds, that is the valley, and to relocate some of the presence of the security forces in Jammu itself, particularly in the border areas. By the way, these operations are not just taking place in the border areas, they have taken place everywhere the route goes. So sometimes you have operations in Doda, sometimes you have operations in Udhampur or attacks in Udhampur by these particular terrorists. These are meant, one is to create maximum propaganda value. The other is also to ensure that the army, which has borne the brunt of these attacks in places like Punch, in places like Doda, in places like Udhampur, that they relocate much of their resources and material to Jammu. Some pressure is taken off Kashmir, and so that they are able to restart their operations in Kashmir once more, which today have become either impossible or next to impossible.
How has Pakistan's policy of supporting terrorist groups like the Jaish-e-Mohammed and Lashkar-e-Taiba contributed to the rise of Islamist extremism across South Asia?
Pakistan has chosen a particular ideological course for itself. This course, I believe, started from the very formation of Pakistan itself. Terror activities, by some reason, by very circuitous and perverse reasons and arguments, seem to be as a pillar of Islam. So I think everything starts from there. Pakistan's support for the Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Taiba starts from this ideological formation. This ideological formation, I am afraid, is linked to its DNA when Pakistan itself was set up.
Despite Pakistan claiming to fight terrorism, there has been report of radicalized madrasas and extremist groups operating freely. What does this reveal about states' inability or unwillingness to curb Islamist extremism?
If Pakistan wants to do something about its madrasas, it will get help from international forces also. It can get help from the Arab world, which is completely turning around. But this is something that Pakistan has to make a choice for itself. Pakistan does not want to reform itself. Its leaders, particularly military leaders, want to keep these madrasas as a handy tool, as a handy base whereby gullible people can be influenced and made to attack whoever they want.
How has Pakistan's close ties with the Taliban impacted the deteriorating situation in Afghanistan? And is Pakistan complicit in the rise of Taliban extremism in the region?
Pakistan believed that it would be able to control the Taliban. So it created and recreated the Taliban. And now you have a Frankenstein which is beyond Pakistan's control. Now, if I want to say one good thing about the Afghan Taliban is that the following, that they have a tendency to remain and curtail their influence within Afghanistan and of course those portions of Pakistan that are Pashtun speaking. Because the Taliban have never given up their claims on those parts of Pakistan which are Pashtun speaking, they believe it is part of Afghanistan. So to that extent, the Taliban may be in control of Afghanistan, but they will also try to extend their influence in certain areas of Pakistan. And in return, from time to time, Pakistan therefore has tried to pay back the coin, pay back the Taliban in the certain kind of a coin, that is to again foster and breed more Islamic terrorists, Muslim terrorists, so that they can create trouble in Afghanistan. However, the kind of control that the Taliban exerts in Afghanistan makes that particular task difficult. So what Pakistan is facing instead is a blowback on its own territory.
India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh said, ready for dialogue with Pakistan if it stops terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir. Do you believe there are any viable paths for genuine dialogue and cooperation between India and Pakistan on the Kashmir issue, considering the current situation?
Pakistan has not been able to reconcile the fact that Article 370 today allows for the complete application of the Constitution of India to Jammu and Kashmir. It has not been able to accept the fact that the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir has been reorganized. It has not been able to accept the fact that Jammu and Kashmir is a part of India. And all its actions stem from these particular positions taken. Given the fact that these positions will not change where Pakistan is concerned, its proclivity to boost, support terror in Jammu and Kashmir will never change. And as long as that does not change, then any possibility of dialogue with Pakistan with respect to Jammu and Kashmir is automatically ruled out.
Thank you so much for your insights, sir.
Thank you very much.
And with that, we come to the end of this edition of Newsweek South Asia. We'll be back next week with more news, views and analysis from the subcontinent. Meanwhile, do keep writing to us at nwsa@anin.com. This is Shivangi Mishra signing off on behalf of the entire production team of Newsweek South Asia. Goodbye and take care.